Right, I am here with my very good friend Adam Cox. It's always a pleasure catching up with you.
Likewise.
Health, you're a holistic and wellness coach, and you help lots of people, including lots of people who've gone through all sorts of different health challenges. And we were just talking about the link between, or we thought it would be good to talk about the link between mindset and health. And I guess this is a fascinating topic. I know through your work, you absolutely think there's a very key link, and the emotional is one side. What's your take on it? How significant, let me ask you this first question, how significant is somebody's mindset with their state of health and their recovery if they have got a health challenge?
I think that it's so significant that without embracing mindset and the emotional components of a human being, we could just be skirting around the surface for potentially forever.
Well, you know, as soon as you said that, you know, the thing that came to me, as soon as you were saying that, I thought, take on a everyday level somebody's interconnection with health. I'm wanting to go fit, I'm wanting to get fit, and I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to take up a class, or what have you. If the mindset isn't right around it, I'm not going to show up, I'm just going to pay my money, or I'm going to be there, I'm going to just be looking at everyone else, and I'm going to think I'm never going to be as good as that. So clearly mindset plays an absolutely huge role.
It does.
We take an elite athlete, two elite athletes, we were talking about this before, one win, and everyone will say this person's technically better than the other player, but the other player beats them every single time, even though the other one's got more in the tank. Mindset.
Mindset, absolutely.
So at all levels, mindset is really, really significant when it comes to health and well-being.
I believe so, and the example you gave there about I want to get fit, I need to go to the gym. I don't go to the gym, I'm already self-sabotaging because I'm not going to the gym now.
Yeah.
If I go and buy the membership, what's the difference between buying the membership and saying I need to go to the gym and what you're already doing, not going to the gym and not exercising? What's the shift? You go, well, I just need to be committed. My question would be, what part of you needs to be more committed? First question. Second question, I would say, what part of you, if you just need to be committed, is it that's making that commitment from where you are now to where you want to be, going to the gym regularly and getting fit? Is it your ego that's doing that?
Right.
I think you probably find it might be the ego that says, I need to do X to get the result. Well, if that is the case, and we know that the ego is part of the conscious mind, which is about 8% of the mind, then there's 92% of which there may be quite a lot of that 92% that maybe doesn't want you to go to the gym. Because if you get the benefit of going to the gym, you might be missing out on the very story that you have right in front of you right now, today, by not going to the gym. That your body is trying, or your mind is trying to show you that there's a lesson there to learn.
Right.
So, I would say, what does going to the gym and getting fit, particularly, what does it mean to you?
And when, as you say that, I mean, it's really powerful, you know, Adam, because then there are so many things that may spring from that. Because somebody might say, well, actually, I'm not sure if I actually want to go to a gym. Maybe I'd far rather be going along the beach. And that may open up a whole different set of exercises, or being outdoors, or other ways of getting
there. What does that mean to you?
Right.
If you were to go to the beach, Rasheed, what does going to the beach?
So if I was to go to the beach, well, I'd be more connected with nature. I naturally find the sea very meditative and very, very restful. I feel connected. I'm already getting some fresh air. I might well walk a very long stretch along the beach anyway, because there might be quite a long space between here and there, so I'm getting quite a lot of walking in.
So what does being meditative, being connected to nature and getting a variety of exercise represent to you?
It means being at peace and being at one and being very restful. So for me, I mean, I would absolutely, it's fascinating on this, because then, I mean, one of the things that's come up for me personally when it's with regard to health and fitness was that one of the things that I realised when I was thinking about how I went to get fit, because often going back to that gym thing, lots of people think, I need to get fit at the gym, so it's a good example. And I realised, well, I'm not really that drawn to gyms, but I actually, the older I've got, enjoy sports, and I enjoy walking. So I do now a lot of walking, and I play sport. And so it's really interesting. There's so many different things, but I love the bit that you also you've also pointed us to, you know, Adam, which is what is the bit of me that might not want to do something. So can you tell us a little bit about that? I think you're pointing us to, is there a story that I'm telling myself about myself, let's say, that I'm not worthy, and actually I want to stay the shape and the size that I actually am? And I get the feeling that this is something that you tackle head on with some of your clients. Is this something that you're saying actually goes on, that actually there might be something where somebody doesn't feel that they're worthy in all sorts of different ways, and that is one of the factors that's stopping not only them going to the gym or whatever, but it's actually might be stopping their recuperation or them having a very happy and healthy life. Tell us a bit about that.
I think part of the person, a small part of the person, might feel unworthy,
right,
or unheard,
right.
And how is it that that part of them is going to get a voice?
Right. Right.
Unless that pain, if that pain is resolved by an external influence, then that message has never been heard. So is it true that it'll keep reoccurring until the actual message is heard?
And you know what's interesting as you say that? It would make a lot of sense, because how many times do we know that somebody's intended to do this or that, or to do this exercise or to do that, and then or this diet, and they've fallen off of it or whatever, even though they know they've studied a lot about health and wellbeing or nutrition or whatever it might well be, and the same things recur. So it would suggest what you're saying, that maybe that thing hasn't been heard. And the other thing that just strikes me now that we're having this kind of very fluid conversation about it is that one of the things that strikes me as a coach, as a life coach, a business coach, very often when people are feeling one thing and they want to feel something else, or let's say a classic one might be fear, I'm afraid about this, and they're wanting to get rid of the fear. I've always felt, or for a long period of time in my own personal, professional, spiritual growth, that fear is actually a very, very beautiful thing. It serves a great purpose in many ways. It keeps me alert, keeps me thinking if I need to move fast or get away from something. And also sometimes embracing that actually with this particular thing, or it might be a doubt or a fear, whatever the emotion is, that actually it might be a service, because actually I want to do this, but maybe there are some doubts. So actually it might be good for them to, as you're saying, to voice those doubts. Actually, is this right? Does this feel right? And sometimes when those things are given an airing, then we move further forward. So it would stand to reason that then we might be far able to just engage with the health and well-being. Well, maybe I'm just going to show up at the gym or whatever. Maybe I'm just going to give this a try. So suddenly then already there's a change in mindset, because it might be, okay, well, yeah, let's just...
Sorry, how much burden does it put on you to say, I'm not going to the gym, or I have back pain, or I'm overweight, or I have some form of ill health, I need to do these things. Right. How much burden does that put on you to say, I have to be somebody else? Right.
Can I ask you something about that? Because that's very powerful. It does.
On you. So
can we take up that particularly? So, for example, one that people might say, let's say I'm overweight. Let's say because it comes up a lot of the time that somebody's overweight, whether they are medically would be called overweight, or if they just think they're overweight in their own mind and they're really, really slim, as we also know that happens. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's a very common one. And let's say somebody's watching this and they feel, yeah, that one does resonate with me. I do feel that I'm overweight. And then you ask that question, how much does it burden you?
Well, yeah, I would say like this, you know. The metaphor that I like is, you know, imagine that you are a young boy or girl and you pick up a guitar and you just enjoy playing that guitar, and because you enjoy playing it, you play it a lot and you get good at it, and a few years down the line you get spotted and you sign a record contract and you're just playing the guitar the way you've always played it and you make a lot of money from it. How different would that be if you contrast it with picking up the guitar and saying I've got to learn 10 chords a day until they're perfect. Once I've mastered the chords, then I'll start writing songs, and I will make sure that I earn that record contract and earn the multi-million-pound deal that I'm worth. Is that similar to saying, right, I don't like exercise, but I need to do exercise, I'm going to change my diet, I'm going to stick to it, and come what may, I am going to do that. There's a small part of you.
Right. So it's interesting, what I'm hearing is that, it might sound like I'm playing with words, but I think that I am putting a weight on myself by that. Exactly. I am literally putting a weight by myself, I'm burdening myself because I already feel that I am overweight.
Yeah.
So I am putting that additional work. I'm carrying a lot of weight. Okay, I might be carrying physical, but then I'm carrying a lot of emotional weight on top of whatever the physical weight is that you're adding onto that. There's a resistance. It's like that resistance, isn't it? So you've got that added layer.
I'm keen, and I love the philosophy that the weight means something to you.
Right.
What does the weight? I mean, you don't. Obviously, to get to this point, you don't go there in the literal sense. But what does being overweight mean to you? Someone might say, "Oh, it means I feel ugly." Okay, that's fair enough. That's the way you feel. What does feeling ugly represent? It represents feeling separate and feeling unloved. What does feeling separate and unloved mean to you? It means that I'm not worthy of love. We're getting down to some core emotions there. If we can then connect with that feeling to start with, not even saying, right, how do we fix that unworthy and unloved part of me? I don't think you do need to fix. In fact, it reminds me of another quote that my mentor said to me recently: there's nothing to fix, only feelings to feel.
I love that. So I love that.
So if we go in and we say, I now can see that I do feel unloved and unworthy, a small part of me feels unloved and unworthy. Well, first of all, taking the torchlight and putting it on those feelings brings them out to play. And we can deal with those. The reason why I'm saying this, Rash, is because what I've found in working with people, whether it's pain or whether it's something like weight or ill health, once we do that, we don't have to use the ego to try and control the situation. The situation slowly ebbs and flows to the point where there's less and less resistance, and oh look, I've lost the weight. We
know what I would certainly say as a life coach and as a life coach, that is absolutely spot on. When I trained as a coach, I've got learned a number of techniques to help people with a number of things, let's say including confidence and so on. The more and more experienced I am, I'm very loath to use those particular techniques because my feeling is that by and large they're hit and miss. They might work sometimes with some people. What I need to do is to get them to be at peace and at one with themselves rather than at pieces with themselves. So it's really interesting often when we let these things be and breathe. And, I was talking before about that thing about the doubts or fears, and exactly as you said, let them be and breathe and explore and appreciate what each emotion actually means, and for it to have an airing, as you say. It's very powerful. It's the same things I relate all the time to the different weather. All the different weather externally is going to happen. All the different weather within is going to happen, because there's going to be, this is my take on it, there'll be times of good health and there will be times of ill health, even if that ill health is just when the body depreciates and ends its physical form. That's part of life. But if I have an appreciation for myself, if I have an appreciation for my health, if I then have and we've talked about this before, then appreciation for my body, all of the bits of my body, including the bits that I like a lot and the bits that I don't currently like, and so on. What would that mean in terms of thing? Even if let's say I say, okay, aesthetically I don't like the tummy or the this or the feet or the neck or whatever it might well be. If I can appreciate that and appreciate that I'm wanting to even enhance that relationship, I would imagine that makes it so much easier to show up and so on. And You know.
What we resist persists.
Right. Right. Right.
I don't like the fact that I'm overweight. I hate the fact that I've got back pain. Push it down,
Yeah.
push it down, push it down.
Yeah.
Well, we're pushing it down, it's going to keep coming back because there's a lesson in that.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
And tell me then, Adam, for people who are listening to this, just before we begin to wrap up, because I think they've given us lots of food for thought, you know, lots to consider and lots to gently sit with and perhaps just meditate on, to be more at peace with and so on. Can you just give me a few tips or just pointers? So that, let's say somebody's listened to this and they thought, actually, you know, it's really interesting what you're saying. I've realised that perhaps my mindset hasn't been as on board with my health or my well-being, or I've felt negative emotions toward myself or what have you. Can you just give me a few pointers or just tips of things that you would say, or you'd invite the viewer who's been struck by this to consider?
Happily.
Mm-hmm.
So take a piece of paper out,
Mm-hmm.
and I would write down on the piece of paper, what is it that you'd like to change?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to lose weight, I'd like to have no back pain.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is that you want to change. Next thing to ask yourself, what would that change mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
The answer to that question, whatever that is, what would that represent
Mm-hmm.
to me? The next layer down, what would be a positive consequence of
Mm-hmm.
the answer
Mm-hmm.
to the representation? What would a negative consequence of that be?
Mm-hmm.
Right there, I don't think you probably need to go very much further than that, because right there you're speaking to a very deep, symbolic part of yourself, where you're going to see something on paper, no doubt, where you think, wow, I feel grief about the fact that I'm currently like this, or I feel jealous towards a certain part of myself because of that. And just doing that, then there's going to be a shift. Now, there's other techniques that obviously you use as a coach, and I use as a coach, that are applicable. And you know, to use your phrase, you know, you dance that dance at that particular time, depending on where you are with the client. But I think even just doing that, what is it that I'd like to change? What does that mean to me?
What I like about what you're saying, you know, Adam, is that if someone's doing that with that piece of paper, then again, I'm having a closer relationship with myself and my well-being through that. And
it's about wholeness,
isn't it?
It's about saying, what are the fragmented parts of myself that are living in the shadow? How can we put the torchlight on those parts of myself that are in the shadow, and then embrace them to bring them into as part of the whole, and to be a whole person?
Right. I like that.
Right?
Well, I like that, and I think that before we go, I want to pick up on something. One of your thoughts about this. It's that around that whole thing about positive and negative. So, that there's a notion that be it that somebody's generally, and let's say they're not familiar with, or they're not, they wouldn't describe themselves as somebody with a high level of health or fitness, or, you know, and it goes the right way to the top. Often elite athletes, this notion of being very positive or very negative. I love your thoughts on this, because I'm I'm not the biggest fan of these words, positive and negative, because straight away we've got a conflict, isn't it? And it makes me, I notice it that sometimes, you know, I'm a big fan of tennis and lots of sport and so on that I watch, and when people are saying I'm positive, I've got to feel if you are going to use a word, I far prefer the things that was more nourishing to you than positive or negative. Because my take on positive and negative is that it is very, it's pure perception. Is it positive that I lost my world championship? Well, actually, well, on one level, no, but then it made me then work even harder, and then, you know, it's even greater if you've lost a world championship and you bounce back and you become world champion again. So a lot of these things, or, you know, was it positive that person, was it a bad thing that person left you when you were, you know, and that you thought you were going to end up being married? Or was it then positive that then you found the person who you were even more compatible with? So positive and negative to me are very funny words that we tend to accept without much looking more closely in terms of what on earth do we mean by positive and negative. Positive and negative to whom, in what context, and so on. You know. And do you think it's the ego that labels it as so? Such. I think it's labelled as such by ego, by thing, and the condition that we just have good and bad, that we want. You know, you've said it before, isn't it? That with the stuff that we go after and the stuff that we run away from. And I think the thing that just strikes me is if we can appreciate, and I've heard you talk about it in terms of relation to fit, if we can just appreciate all the different aspects of life, being here, appreciating life, appreciating that there's a finite time that we have, then I can be far more appreciative, less fearful of those things. And it's a bit like, for example, take something that was very serious. That let's say you've just had somebody's just had a bereavement. Then of course nobody ever wants that. But often at those moments, or somebody's had very ill health, or they know of somebody who's had ill health, often those are the things that really make us all of a sudden appreciate the fact that we're here, appreciate that the fact that maybe now I need to get on with my life, maybe now I need to be more compassionate. There can be so many benefits that can come from that. So my feeling is that the things that we label, it's a bit like for me, it's sun and rain. You know, is it a good thing that it's sunny? Is it a bad thing that it's raining? Well, you know, and it makes me laugh when we so easily say, oh, it's a miserable day because it's raining. So I just find it very, very bizarre that we let that positive and negative, because I think it's actually absurd. I would go as far as to say it's a little bit absurd. Of course, you want to be mindful of what's going to be more nourishing for me, what's more helpful for me. But again, I'd really welcome your thoughts about that, because you actually work with people on that journey when you're helping them with their health and fitness. Can you tell me what's your take on it?
I think they're both. Bizarrely, I think they're both positive. I think positive and negative are both positive.
Yeah.
In the sense,
yes.
Beneficial.
Yes.
Positive and negative are both beneficial because they're part of a duality. They're part of a relationship, in my opinion. You know, you look at the Taoist philosophy of yin and yang. There is no, what they say, you know, when you look at the symbol's called Wu Qi. There is no Wu Qi without yin and yang.
Absolutely.
There's no life, there's no human beings without males and females.
Right.
Hot and cold.
Right.
They are present. You wouldn't know hot if you didn't know what cold was.
So you can't completely,
you don't know what positive is unless you know what negative is.
Right.
So I think that conversation around duality, positive and negative, it's all relative, isn't it?
It is all relative, isn't it? And it's, I mean, it's a bit, I think one of the things that when I was doing some sessions with you that struck me just before we kind of closed was that sometimes people think that, for example, when it comes back to health, that health is something that I'm getting fit, okay, I'm going to get fit, and then the job is done. But it's not the job done. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. It's a bit like it's like cleaning a window. The windows will always need to be cleaned periodically, and might vary depending where you live and how much dirt there is, or the house, or the outside, or the traffic that's passing by, or the insects, or whatever it might be. So it's interesting, isn't it, when we realise that they all cohabit. You know, I think it just makes it a little bit easier. It's a bit less hard work. Otherwise, I've got to be, and you see this a lot in the health and fitness, I've got to be positive, I've got to be thinking, I've got to do that, and I've got to do that. And you were saying in one of our previous talks that...
That's denial.
Just think it's...
I suppose a certain part of yourself.
I think it's certainly repression, isn't it? It's certainly repression. It's trying to control, and it can be damaging. In one of our previous talks, you made a wonderful point, you know, Adam, about that. If someone, let's say, got a lot of pressure on, or they got a lot of stress on at work and so on, they might be thinking, okay, now I need to go and do a run. Yeah. But you made the point that maybe, perhaps at that time, if their body's got a lot of stress, going for a run, and if that's going to put a lot of stress, additional stress, then maybe that is not the best. Maybe you're going to, maybe something else. So, and I think that's very, very so true. So I think that sometimes the pressure we put on ourselves to be this and that, and to not realise, well, what's the value? What's the value over here of that? You know, it's a bit like, what might be the value in having a treat, for example?
Exactly, yeah.
You know, having a treat. What's the value then having a treat?
Good point.
you know, I could treat myself. But I know I've got to be really tough with myself.
Yeah,
Why are we being...
absolutely. And where does that toughness then end up?
Right.
Somewhere else in your life.
Right. Right.
Does it then manifest in you know, a bad relationship with another person?
Right.
That relationship with the treat.
Yeah.
Where does that relationship go if it's, you know, I've got to eat carrot sticks instead of a chocolate
and if
bar?
it's got nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And it would certainly suggest that why people do lots of yo-yo diet or struggle, or you see it a lot of the time, isn't it, where people, maybe they've done really well, they've been disciplined for a period of time and they've lost all the weight, and then suddenly a year later, they're back to the same size. It happens a lot of the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, is it that they've done really well because they've used the ego to control the situation,
Right.
but yet that unspoken little voice that still wasn't heard ended up winning the battle between the ego and the little voice, because if we just, it probably is slower. I don't know, I've never measured it, you know, but embracing the little voice and allowing the change just to manifest itself.
Yeah. Well, there's something beautifully organic about what you're saying, you know.
Do you know what? That's sorry to cut off, but that's the best word for it, organic.
Well, it is, isn't it? And I think and you know, as you were saying there, what I got a sense of is that therefore, if we could see our health as something that we've got a relationship to ourselves for our whole lifetime, and how am I feeling right now? How am I feeling today, this morning, or generally, or this stage in my life? How is it I need to treat myself? Maybe at this stage in my life, I'm trying for a baby, or I'm pregnant, or I'm, you know, getting to this particular point in my life, or I've just taken on a new job, so I need to be mindful about. You know, if we could realise that it's fluid, and to work with what we need. I mean, I've certainly found that I've realised for myself that balance looks different to how it might look for the next person, and I generally know when I've, in the course of a few days, not had enough of the nutritional or the you know, raw veg or fruits and so on, I'm aware of it, I can feel it, and I'm just mindful, okay, you need to be mindful about this and that and so on, because actually then there's an impact. But if I'm trying to be too regimented, too much the controller, then I'm already in a battle with myself. So I think that this is where for me, this mindset thing is that I have this saying, you know, Adam, that people often say that life is giving them a tough time. But usually, I note if you observe it, often you're the first to beat yourself up. Do you know what I mean? So, so just a last word for you then in terms of this, in terms of health and mindset. Again, if somebody's been watching this and that they feel as though that their mindset, that they struggle with their mindset, can you just give us any other thoughts or any other pointers that you would say?
Yeah, I would say a good habit to get into is listening to your thoughts and embracing them. Whether they be what you label as positive or negative, bringing them out into the open, maybe not literally but in your mind, and not pushing it to the back, saying, yeah, I do feel like so-and-so, I do feel not like I want to feel, but I actually am going to embrace that, because you know, if you put a name on it, you can. If you name it, you can tame it.
I'd also add, you know, I love that. Thing. You know, I love that. Yeah.
But if you can't name it, i.e., if you keep brushing it under the carpet, then you can't do anything with it. So I would say, parting thoughts were just be aware of that dialogue that you have with yourself, and embrace the good bits that you label as good, and the bits that you also label as not so good. And,
I like that.
That in itself could have a fantastically, I was going to say positive then, fantastically useful
I just want
influence.
to. I love that, and I just want to add to that. I think that what's often negated in all of that is, and one of the things that I do personally, and I often encourage people, is to we wake up every morning, just be grateful for all the stuff that is going well, because often there's so much focus on the things that we perceive as going badly or not well. You've got no appreciation, literally no appreciation, or you haven't recognised, you haven't connected to all the things that are going, well, okay, I'm here, I've got a level of health, I've got some friends, I've got some people I get on well with, I've got a roof over my, or whatever it might well be, the 2 or 3. Suddenly you're in a far more buoyant place to actually be able to address what you're wanting to do, because I think that therefore often the negating of that and just focusing on what we perceive, or that one area or that one thing that we, that we perceive isn't good. We're missing the rest of our magic.
Do you know what I found as well, actually, is that we can quite often think about what we want to change. Mm-hmm. And if we think about what we want to change, where is that change? Is it now, or is it somewhere else? Is it in the future? It's in the future, right?
Right.
So, when I get there, when I've earned more money, when I've lost some weight, when I'm looking in better shape, when my back's less painful, when my shoulder's less painful. Futurizing yourself.
And it's problematic, isn't it?
It's tiring.
It's tiring. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think the last thing I want to add to that is that that's such an illusion, because I've got a notion, as a coach, I've got a notion that when I get this job, when I've got this amount of money, I haven't been there, so I actually don't know. So it's a bit like, if I was living on Mars, I'm creating an idea of what that thing will be, and I've got an idea of what I will be with that kind of thing. And it's absolutely absurd, because it is just purely projection. It's pure projection of this and this, and it is also it's negating what's actually going on now. And I think what you're powerfully pointing to is that perhaps you can address the emotional and the inner well-being, the spiritual well-being stuff now. You can really address that now, rather than here, where it may be that, or it might be the fact that when you've got more money, you're more paranoid about how you're going to keep your money. It's a bit like, I use the example that somebody wants lots of money. The people think, okay, I want lots of money because then all my money troubles go. But if you've got no money, then you've got certain money, because you're trying to get money. If you've got lots of money, you've got different money troubles because you're trying to hang on to it. You're worried that everyone's going to steal it. Or, there can be all these perceptions, like I want to be the boss because I want more responsibility, and then you become the boss and you've got weighed down by all the responsibility. So it's funny, isn't it, how the tricks of mindset, and I think that points us back to the appreciation of who we are. And I loved where you took us to that thing about whereby, and going back and to end with that thing about the weight. Well, what does it again represent? And is there a way of us shedding the weight of how we feel about our weight and developing a good relationship to our body now, which we're going to need now, during, if there's going to be a process, and if we get to this point where we have a different body shape?
I love that, what you just said there. Shedding the weight of how I feel about myself. Is the physical weight a weight of being weighed down by my emotions? Could be for some people.
Well, it'll be interesting. If you have any views on that too, post them here below. But if people are trying to find you, my friend, what's the best way for people to find you? People wanting to... And I can't wait for your book. I'm looking for... Your book might even be up by the time when people are watching this, when people are watching. Can you just tell us if people are trying to find you, Adam?
Easiest place is to go to the website www.movementlifestyle.com, and there are contact forms on there, and there's also a blog.
Yeah, and people will find you on Twitter if they search you on Twitter as well.
Yes, the Twitter feed is also on the website.
Fantastic. I can't tell you, it's always, from a point of view, from having worked with you personally and from talking to you, I always just find it just so nourishing, so enriching, so wonderful. It's just always such a joy. So I'm sure that we'll have to get you back to talk about some other topics in the future. But thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Take care. See you later.
Cheers.